Hey, what's going on guys? Alex Bazooka here from Mr. Build It, and in today's video, I'm going to show you how we made this beautiful bathroom toilet area transformation that's also equipped with a wireless cell phone charging station. So, without wasting any time, let me show you how I did it, and let's get into the video. Let's go!
The hexagon accent wall was the first part of the project I got started with. I went with a 3/4 inch thick 4x8 sheet of MDF, and the great thing is I only needed half a sheet for the amount of hexagons that I would require for the wall. So basically that's like 15 bucks. So far, budget-wise, we're looking pretty good. I cut up 1-inch strips on my table saw. Now, if you do not own a table saw to accomplish this part, there are other alternative options.
All right, you beautiful people, so I'm out here ripping up all these 1-inch pieces right over there. Look at that crazy pile right there. Now, if you don't have a nice sturdy table saw like I do, here's a solution. Perfectly doable. Take yourself a circular saw, get yourself a clamp and a straight edge, maybe like a 1x5, and create your cuts. So back to work, let's go.
Since we will need roughly 70 hexagons for the wall, I built a quick and simple jig to help recreate a lot of these repeatable cuts.
All right guys, so for the hexagon shape, you are going to get one of these tools. There's really no other option. You need a miter saw. It doesn't have to be fancy. It could be one of those cheap ones you get on Craigslist or Facebook for, first of all, who uses Craigslist anymore? For about, I don't know, 50, 60 bucks, or you can get yourself a nice one like this from DeWalt. Anywho, but here's the trick. In order to have the repeating cuts, because keep in mind, we're gonna need a lot of them. Here's what I did, is I took and created a 30-degree angle, which 30-degree angles is what it takes to create a hexagon shape. And I took a piece like this, and I clamped it down to my fence. Now, and I clamped it with this perfect piece that I already came up with, spaced out. So my blade comes down, it concludes it perfectly. So anything in this area is gonna be the perfect diameter and the perfect length that we need for a repeating hexagon shape. So I'm gonna get back onto it and finish this job right. All right, so here's the kicker. So the MDF is 3/4 inches deep. I'm not gonna have an issue putting it on except for one part, this reservoir, the container for the water. The issue is that for the most part, all these toilets are 30 inches deep, 30 1/4. And this is sitting against the wall. And I think it's a design issue where the thing kind of leans against it to distribute the weight so you don't fall back and break the, the plumbing out of the place. So, I'm basically making an outline where that reservoir will go, the tank, and then I'm gonna take the toilet out and install all of our patterns like we cut out, and then we're gonna bring the toilet in and make sure we make all the flush cuts in the tight spots. So it'll be interesting, to say the least. Yeah, it'll be fine.
A few things to keep in mind to set yourself up for success is, number 1, turn off the water and give it one last flush. Number 2, be mindful that this thing is pretty heavy, so have a designated spot that you'll be ready to set the toilet while you work. And number 3, even with the water being drained from the reservoir, there is still a few cups of water in the lower section of the toilet below the bowl, so that when you shake the toilet as you're moving it, it will spill some of it out from the bottom. For installing the hexagons, I'm using an 18-gauge brad nail gun with 1 3/4 inch nails. Be mindful with hexagons having 6 points or corners, that's basically 6 opportunities to skew the hexagons just a bit that will throw the pattern off on the next layer. Now, my advice would be to stack at least 3 pieces at a time and then secure the pieces with the nails. This will cut your misalignment chances in half.
All right, boys and girls, I'm not gonna lie to you. This is a little tough, a little frustrating, but a couple of things I found to be helpful. Number 1, you know what? Go level by level. Don't rush it. Don't take one side. Do level by level. And then number 2, this is the big MVP, a laser level. You don't have to have a big fancy one, but something you can strap on to, I don't know, some kind of post or a tripod, and then go level by level with that, slow and steady. There are some parts you're gonna have to tweak. Just use a little tap with the hammer, but overall, it's working out just fine. I'm gonna remind you guys, if I could do it, you guys can do it. You just have to just embrace the suck sometimes, make some mistakes, readjust, fix them. End of the day, you can patch things up, you can put a little caulk in there, whatever it is. Everything's fixable, guys. Let's get back. All right, kids, so all the hexagons are brad nailed to the drywall. They're not in the studs like, baseboards would be or anything like that. but we're gonna glue them to the drywall around the perimeter. So we're gonna take caulk. This is a paintable one. This is nice. This one's ready to paint in about 20 minutes. And we're gonna go around every hexagon. We're gonna use a damp rag to clean up the lines a lot better. This stuff can get a little sticky if you let it dry. And I don't know. I think it's pretty simple. Super basic stuff, guys. I think this is the easy part now. All right, boys and girls, I got all the pieces hung up. I got everything extra brad nailed and caulked around. Now, everything I build is a prototype. So, and from every prototype, I learned a lesson. Here's the lesson I'm gonna pass on to you guys at my expense. If you guys tackle on this project, one step I recommend for you guys to do is have a tube of silicone or any kind of adhesive and put a couple of dabs behind each piece as you're assembling them. It won't make a mess or anything like that if you just do a few dabs. That way you can have adequate, I don't know, adhesion behind every piece. Now, I'm sure this will be fine. I'm sure I'll figure out a way how to make sure I don't have any issues, but my gift to you guys is just learn from my mistakes or my prototypes. So I'm gonna go ahead and fill up all these million brad nail holes with wood putty, and I'll let it dry overnight, and tomorrow we're gonna throw some paint on it. Thanks, guys.
For the wood filler, I like to use a product from DAP, which has a color changing additive that applies pink and then it turns tan when it's dry and ready to sand.
Alright guys, so I was sanding everything down flush, sweating up a storm. I don't know if you can see that. Listen, it takes a little bit of elbow grease here to sand everything flush. That's the reason why we have courage and sweat on our shirts here. It's because it takes the courage to try projects like this, not be afraid to fail. And it takes sweat. It takes a lot of hard work to actually execute this kind of stuff, because it's not a project you just tackle in 30 minutes. So, courage and sweat, guys, embrace it. It comes with every kind of project, and I think it just helps us in life. So I'm gonna finish this up, and then I'm gonna shoot some primer on it. And the primer is meant for, because MDF is like a sponge. As soon as you put paint on it, it just keeps absorbing until it fills up all the pores. So to prevent that, I'm gonna put 1 or 2 coats of primer, give it a light sand, and then we'll do the paint. We got a special surprise for the paint. It's kind of interesting. Hope you guys like it.
When applying the primer, I would recommend using a brush for the inside hard-to-reach parts of the hexagon and use a small foam roller for the outside faces. This will help keep a smooth surface to save you a step on the sanding later on in the process.
Alright, so the primer is dry. We only brushed it on, about 2 coats on there. And yeah, you're going to see all these lines there, but the trick is you have to sand it. And I'm just using a little 180 grit sandpaper there, a little block. And we're just going to get rid of any of these harsh lines. That way when the paint goes on, it's going to go nice and smooth. So prep is everything when it comes to painting things smoothly. All right, I can't tell you how excited I am to finally start painting. So the paint that I'm using is, it's a color called Jasper. It's weird in a cool way where we want to do flat black, and then we're like, well, what about this super dark, little bit of hint of like forest green? It'll just be a cool little accent piece. I'll be curious to hear how many people like or don't like this color, but we like it. So I'm gonna feed this into my spray gun. I have a spray gun, an airless spray gun to paint this. You can use a paintbrush, I just haven't, might as well use it, right? So I'll put a couple of coats and hopefully it'll turn out.
The spray gun I'm using is a Graco Ultra Cordless Airless Sprayer. You can spray everything from clear coat to latex paint without having to dilute any of the paint. Though I'm using a spray gun, you can always hand roll the paint. Just be sure to use a foam roller instead of the bristle ones to help keep the smooth finish that we've worked so hard for.
All right, folks, every once in a while, life throws us a bone here, and this is the bone that was just thrown to me. I was expecting, like from the very beginning of the video, to have to cut out these pieces, these trim pieces that are the hexagon ones, in order to fit the reservoir. And by slapping this thing on, I have the 3/4 inches to actually make this thing work. Now it's gonna be like a perfect fit, like meaning there's no wiggle room, but it's perfect nonetheless. We're gonna have a good seal on the toilet, nothing's gonna be compromised, no pressure points. So, a really, really good day. Now, if you guys have never installed a toilet before, it's very simple. It's just 2 bolts going down into a flange in the ground. But here's the most important thing that you guys need to take away from this is you're gonna need to put a new seal or a new wax ring as some of the toilets have. And all it is this box for about $7 will have a donut-shaped wax ring. And all you do is you pop the sucker out, put it into the little outline, and then gently level the toilet seat down. And what ends up happening is the wax ring starts creating a border around, creating a perfect seal. And we know what wax does when water gets on it, you can't get it off. So that's what it does. And then we're gonna put the 2 new bolts in there, take the washers and the nuts and tighten them down. And then we'll connect the water and get this thing going. So really excellent day, guys. Nice. I have a way to spruce this up a little bit. Let's make this bathroom just one extra step fancy. Check this out. All right, so this just showed up, but this is a toilet seat bidet cover. Really excited about this. Always wanted one after trying one at my in-laws' house. If you've never tried one, I dare you to try it. You will never use toilet paper again. So I'm gonna go ahead and install this and we'll see how easy it is. Thanks, Alpha Bidet.
The bidet seat installation goes very smoothly. The kit comes with an adapter for the water lines that connect to your toilet and piggybacks into the bidet itself. Now, once I installed it, it just plugs right into an outlet and it's ready to use. This particular bidet is the Alpha JX bidet toilet seat. I'll be sure to link it in the description below if you guys want to check it out.
All right, this puppy's installed. If you excuse me, I'm gonna go ahead and take this puppy through the setup mode. So I'll be right back. All right, well, I'm at a stoplight, so I'm not gonna drive and record. I am on my way to go pick up some lumber for the floating shelves and the charging station that I wanna do. The wood I wanna pick up is a white ash, so unfortunately it's too exotic, not that exotic, but too fancy for like a local hardware store. And typically at your local hardware store or at your local lumber yard, you could find some pretty good deals on some of these nicer quality woods that are a little more fancy. So gonna go pick up some of it and I'll show you how pretty it is.
I picked out 8-foot long white ash boards that's 1/4 sawn thick. Now that's just fancy woodworking ways of saying it's rough cut, which means it's not perfect, and 1/4 basically means in thickness it's about 2 inches thick. I cut 2 40-inch long boards that will be the shelves, trimmed to clean up the edges using my table saw to final width of 8 inches, and then cleaned up the boards using my sander going from 80 grit to 120 grit. Now, side note, I have a thickness planer in my shop, so I made a few passes to bring the boards down to 1.5 inches thickness. If you don't have one, don't worry. Sometimes you can find some of these boards to be flat enough to be used as is for the shelves in the house. I've played around with a few ideas how to mount these solid wood shelves without any exposed brackets, and I've come up with a way to accomplish this using angle iron that you can find at any hardware store. First, I made 1¼ inch deep passes on my table saw to achieve the width and depth of the angle iron just 1/4 inch from the bottom of the shelf. Once I got a good snug fit, I then created another 1/8 inch wide cut to recess and hide the angle iron inside the shelf. Then I marked out 4 holes that I would drive screws through both the wood and the metal, keeping the shelf in place after securing the angle iron to the wall studs. Now this is the first time I've tried this method, so it's a prototype. It's definitely strong enough for decor, but I wouldn't use this method on heavier things like books without creating some sort of supports on the sides as well. I later filled the sides of the shelves with caulk and was surprised that that alone significantly took away any flex that was present. Again, this is a prototype, but sometimes you have to take a chance on an idea and see how you can perfect it later on.
Okay, so now we're gonna do a little craft project. I wanna create another shelf. This is the same ash material that I use for the rest of the floating shelves, but I wanna make a little, basically a little shelf for, I don't know, a beer if you have, a drink as you're going to the bathroom for whatever reason, if you're a parent, definitely. But most of that, I wanted to create a charging station for an average cell phone that you can lay on top and it'll charge. Now, I'll show you how I get to it in a second, but in the meantime, I want to put a pattern on top just because this just looks blank. Like it looks like somebody just took a piece of wood and just nailed it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a little, I don't know, a little stencil like that, which is just olive branches. And I want to cut it out and pour epoxy with a color to it, like a green, like an olive green kind of color. That way it's an indicator that, hey, the cell phone area charging station might be right there. So to accomplish this, I just printed off this pattern that I found online, nothing fancy. I'm just gonna cut it out. I have 2 copies here because I know I'm gonna mess up. So this is the first time I've ever done something like this. It looks pretty easy from social media, but you know. We're gonna lay it over here. So this is, to get this template over, this is a 3M spray adhesive, general purpose, number 45. And the way you do it, give it a light coat. It's kind of like hairspray basically. And you're gonna take this stuff. Oh, it's getting sticky already. We're just gonna lay that right over there. Now, this stuff's not going anywhere. And I'm gonna take my plunge router with a V-groove router bit, and I'm gonna slowly plunge this thing out. So fingers crossed I don't screw up too badly.
To fill the carved out pattern, I'm using a 2-part resin and 1-part hardener of epoxy from Total Boat. And I added a few of their sprinkles of that turquoise pigment to give this pattern a hint of greenery. I'll link the epoxy system that I used in the video description down below. Now, because this is a slow curing system, I'll have to leave it overnight so that it could cure and it'll be hard enough to start sanding down. The next day, I took 120 grit sandpaper to start sanding the excess epoxy down, leaving only what's in the carved out pattern.
All right, we got our little shelf for the toilet area figured out and done. I flipped it over, and here is the little charging disc that I'm gonna be using. It's basically a platform that you can lay a cell phone, an iPhone, a Samsung over it, and it'll start wirelessly charging. It's actually kind of trippy how that kind of technology works. Anywho, gonna flip this thing over, and on the back side of the little template that I created, I'm going to cut out the exact thickness of this, and I'm gonna secure it in place either with epoxy or double-sided tape. I don't know yet, but pretty exciting new stuff happening. So again, like always, it'll be interesting to see how it turns out, and if it screws up, then we'll just try it again. No big deal.
After tracing the template of the charging pad on the back side of the shelf, I cut out an area using the router plunged down to 1/2 inch deep. Now, the less material that stands between the charging pad and the cell phone that will be charged, the stronger the charging signal. Afterwards, I decided to secure the charging pad to the back of the shelf using a double-sided tape instead of epoxy, only because if the charger ever gives me any issues or grief, I can just simply remove it and troubleshoot the problem. I added a small 2x5 block of wood, the same material that the shelf's made out of, to act as a mounting bracket, and I only made it to go across halfway of the shelf. That way it still has that floating shelf illusion. And then I mounted it over the USB charging outlet on the wall.
Hey, thanks so much for sticking around watching this video. If you're brand new to the channel and you like videos like this, or you simply want to see how I made this beautiful vanity transformation, make sure you hit that subscribe button right over there. We put videos out all the time and we don't want you to miss a single one. Make sure you follow me on social media. I'll put my links down in the description below. Like, comment, and share this video with your friends. I would love to connect with you guys. Tune in out this week. We'll see you guys on the next one. See ya. Bye.